Before we get into the video, I do want to highlight a very important initiative that both Grapes and Hawk are doing for the 2024 CLOL season. So if you haven't heard, or if you've been living under a rock, or if you haven't seen the news, the 2024 CLOL season will not be having an official broadcast. With that information, Grapes and Hawk have decided to crowdfund a fully streamed and fully produced 2024 CLOL broadcast. If you care about collegiate, please consider donating. No amount is too little and everything helps. If you can't donate, please think about retweeting it and resharing it through all your social media pages. The group we'll be talking about in this video is Group C. This group consists of University of Western Ontario, Weber State University, University of Texas at Dallas, and Purdue Northwest University. This group is where things really start to get serious. You'll notice a lot of players in these groups either have competed in the tier 1 or are competing in OQs or have competed at like open qualifier events and in the tier 3 scene. A lot of these players are actively trying to get better or have made pushes into competitive or have gotten to higher levels of play. And this is where we really start to see a lot of these teams start to potentially make runs for top 8, top 4 even, right? These players are very serious about improving and are very serious, or were very serious at a time in their careers, to get very, very competitive and to reach higher levels of play. The first team we'll be talking about is University of Western Ontario. They compete in the CLOL East Conference. They dropped one game heading into the grand finals, losing 3-1 to St. Clair, overall ending second place in the East. Their roster consists of top laner Calculus, jungler Crackedon, mid Mira, bottom laner Lynx, and support Loyal. And with Crackedon and Loyal, they are both NACL OQ players or OQ players, and bottom laner Lynx has actually qualified for NACL this year with Blue Water Gaming. The big thing about this team is that Lynx has a very diverse champion pool as an AD carry. He will lean towards the Aphelios and some of those scaling picks, but has the Callista, has the Varus ready in his pocket if it's available. Calculus is a big top lane carry. The Renekton, the Camille, the Jace, the Aatrox. He's a secondary carry in my mind for this team and has really done a good job trying to improve his game over the course of the season, competing at different levels of play, whether it's combines, whether it's open qualifiers. He's just really been honing his skills. Loyal can play the mage supports, but typically plays tank supports like Braum, Ali, Not. He's got some cool stuff in his pocket because he used to be a mid laner and he competed in open qualifiers as a mid laner. So his champion pool is a little bit different and can bust out different things like the Hui or even the Nico or whatever mage they kind of want to pilot down there. Myra plays a lot of Silas, Ahri, LeBlanc, like very aggressive mid lane picks, and he pairs up well with Crackedon when they go for these really aggressive 2v2s, either in the mid lane or even the top lane, where Calculus will play like Renekton, Aatrox. Crackedon's picking a lot of Sedge, more than what I've seen other junglers in this level play, pairing that up with the double melee or pairing early to mid game, 2v2s and really trying to gank across the map, get pressure across the map, because Lynx and Loyal will just do their job and will lane really efficiently. So Crackedon is, playing towards Calculus, playing for these mid 2v2s, and then affecting the map elsewhere, diving bottom with 4-mans or even 5-man fights sometimes around these objectives. Second team we'll be talking about is Weber State University. They compete in the CLOL West Conference. They went 5-2 in the regular season into a flawless playoff run, dropping 0 games and going 12-0 to take first in CLOL West. Their roster consists of top laner Jezorix, jungler Zadox, mid laner Goku, bottom laner Sandy, and support St. Daniel. And with this roster, you'll notice that Goku, the mid laner, is a tier 1 CBLOL pro. He competed in CBLOL as early as last year. Zadox, Sandy, and Daniel all competed in open qualifiers with Glaive Esports Prime. Both Zadox and Sandy were players, and St. Daniel at the time was their coach, who is now their support for this Weber State University. Sandilian plays a lot of Varus, Ashe. He will regularly pick Hui in a lot of these matchups, so he's got a really cool champion pool. Zadox is typically leaning towards really aggressive junglers. Lee Sin, Xin Zhao, Rek'Sai, Kha'Zix is coming out. Goku's playing a ton of LeBlanc, Talia, and Ahri. Can play all the meta stuff because he's been a tier 1 pro, but you can really see how they like to link up with these mid 2v2 jungle pairings. Saint is your typical tank support player. Braum, Nautilus, Leona, Thresh. I think he's probably the one also doing a good amount of the shot calling, since he was a previous coach for about 2/5 of this roster. Mid 80 carry are the big carries for this team. Sandillion eventually just gets to a point where he's pretty much unstoppable on champions like the Varus. He's picked other late game carries as well, Jinx, so on and so forth. But the mid jungle 2v2, a common theme you'll see with a lot of his teams, are very good. They'll play for aggressive stuff, looking for map pressure, looking for roams, right? With the LeBlanc, with the Taliyah, with the Xin Zhao, the Rek'Sai, even Kha'Zix coming out and just using the lane pressure that Goku causes because he's so dominant in lane to affect the map elsewhere. Fundamentally, this is a very strong team, right? 4 players with higher competitive experience, their floor is very high, and the way they move and play on the map, this looks like a team that understands what to do, when to do it, and execute on a lot of their win compositions and game conditions a lot better than other CLOL teams, which is why I think they seem so head and shoulders above the rest of the West. But it's hard to judge them considering how dominant they looked in the West and how that'll compare against the rest of the competition in the upper echelon of CLOL. The third team we'll be talking about is University of Texas at Dallas. They compete in the CLOL South Conference. They went 7-0 in their group stage, making it all the way to grand finals before losing 3-2 to UST, who at the time was using a substitute player in Novabot instead of Array. Their roster consists of top laner Arya, jungler Mr. Fluffy 631, mid laner Jameeb, bot laner Deftly, and support YHL. Now, when looking at this University of Texas Dallas roster or UTD roster, they have the least amount of players that have hit the upper echelon of play or have attempted to hit higher levels of play. Realistically, it's only Deftly, who is an LCS player, and YHL, who's an OQL player, that have really trying to gone to the upper limits, right? Jameeb, Mr. Fluffy, Arya, they have very little competitive experience, if none, outside of the collegiate space, but this team is still very good. They have easy to execute mid-jungle combos with Jameeb and Mr. Fluffy. They play things like Orianna Vi, Taliyah Vi, Azir Zin, that kind of stuff. The bread and butter combos that you've been seeing kind of taking over the meta so far, they have that down pat. Their top lane plays a lot of standard top lane champions. Aura play like Aatrox, Renekton, Volibear, Udyr. They have surprisingly good laners for how little competitive experience they have. Jameeb and Arya regularly are solo killing some of their counterparts and people that are in theory perceived as like higher elo or have more competitive experience. They do a good job laning and holding themselves against better competition. Definitely is still obviously a big carry for this team. He's an LCS player. He has really good combos with YHL, who has a very deep champion pool, right? Plays the tanks, play the enchanters, but also has stuff like Bard, Maokai, Rumble in his back pocket for all these different pairings. And I can think of no better player than an LCS bot laner who has played so many different metas, who has played so many different champions to pair those support pairings with, because it's not that different and it won't be difficult for these guys to get on the same page and execute on these like wacky bot lane pairings. I think UTD this year has kind of flown under the radar and maybe has been a little bit underrated because they compete in the CLOL South Conference, but this is still a very good team. And, you know, definitely in YHL have a lot of bot lane pairings that they can just kind of hard carry out the lanes and out of these games. But Arya, Mr. Fluffy, Jameeb, all very much hold their own and have had, you know, budding carry performances here and there across some of the games. Although the CLOL South Conference may not be that deep in competition, right? Realistically, there's 3 teams that are very competitive and the rest, it becomes a little less competitive. There's a big gap. UTD have shown that they can step up to the plate and compete with higher level competitions. Although they lost 3-2 to UST and UST was using a sub, that roster still consists of players like TC Porsche, Kenvi, who is also a former LCS jungler, Robbie Bob, a 2-time CLOL champion. Like, these are not bad players, and the fact that UTD was able to take them to 5 games and was 2-0 up on the series before getting reverse swept definitely shows that this team has a lot more to them than what you see on paper. And that's why I think this team is very deadly, because of how underrated and, you know, maybe not respected this team might be against some of the upper levels of competition. The fourth and final team we'll be talking about is Purdue Northwest University. They compete in the Midwest Esports Conference. They went 6-1 in their regular season before dropping into the lower bracket from a round 2 playoff loss to the Ottawa Braves before making a massive losers bracket run, beating ONU, Ottawa, and GVU to become the champions of the Midwest Esports Conference. Their roster consists of top laner Prank, jungler Doubtful, mid laner Klexo, bottom laner Winking, and support Poner. This team has a lot of players that have competed at the OQ level or the tier 3 level. Doubtful, Klexo, and Winking recently competed in the latest OQs, and Prank has competed at the tier 3 level and open qualifiers with this Purdue Northwest roster. There are 4 players here that are very hungry, that are very willing to try to hit that next level of play and continue their playing careers. And so this is why Purdue Northwest, I think, is another deadly team in this Group C. They have a strong emphasis on the mid-jungle 2v2. Doubtful, Klexo by far looked like the best mid-jungle 2v2 in the Midwest Esports Conference, and it definitely showed during their losers bracket run. They have all the standard bread and butter meta picks that you could think of, the Nocturne Ori, Talia Zin, Azir Wukong, that kind of stuff, but they're also willing to bust out things like the Diana Yasuo combo or Silas Lee Sin, Silas Zin, and really take over games. Their AD carry plays a lot of scaling picks, think Jinx, Aphelios, that kind of stuff, Kog'Maw, Sivir even, but has the ability to bust out the Hui AP carry if the conditions are right. Their support Poner has played a lot of different roles and has a lot of different champions under his belt. Right now he's playing support and has played a lot of the tank supports, but has the Blitzcrank and Nico in the back pocket given the right combinations. Their top laner Prank is a very steady, stable top laner, plays Udyr, plays the new tank Rek'Sai, Cassante, Volley, has a Gwen that he has specialized in and can bring out into like tank matchups. If he sees like an Ornn or a Sion or something like that, he's more than willing to pick that up and put the carry pants on when needed. The thing I like about this Purdue Northwest roster is that they're very aggressive early game. The mid 2v2 of Doubtful, Klexo, no surprise in this group, are very, very good. They're aggressive across the map. They dive bottom lane. They'll use their advantages to invade jungle. They have a lot of pressure once they get into those winning scenarios, and they don't ease up on the gas. You can see them constantly looking for plays, playing for objectives, whether it's Dragon, Grubs, Baron, Heralds, or even they'll play for like your blue buff and your red buff and really kind of put pressure on your side of the map, deny vision, really choke out parts of the map. And Doubtful and Klexo do a really good job playing team fights and playing these 5v5s very well, whether they're flanking, whether they're finding massive engages. These 2 players are like very, very good for Purdue Northwest. And if you can't keep them in check, if you can't handle them, they will take over games. And by the time it's hit 30, 35 minutes, 33 minutes, Winking has scaled up on his scaling picks and will just clean up team fights and do his job. Purdue Northwest is one of those teams that has looked very, very good in the Midwest Esports Conference, and during their losers bracket run almost looked undefeatable, right? Only dropping 1 game after falling to losers bracket, and that was to the Ottawa Braves. They went on to like go undefeated after that. That wraps it up for our breakdown of Group C. If you notice something about this group, it's that they have a lot of highly competitive players and players that either were hungry or are hungry to compete at higher levels of play. You have LCS players, CLOL players, current OQ and NACL players. There is a heavy amount of competition, and as we get into the higher groups, Group B and A, you'll notice that the number of competitive players and the number of players that compete in other tournaments continue to rise. This is why the level of competition gets so much exponentially higher once you get into these upper echelon of groups, and Group C is no different. In our next video, we'll be going over Group B, which consists of St. Thomas, Fisher College, St. Clair, and Northwood University. See you in the next video.